everyone, coming to you again with another regular movie review, and today I wanted to talk about The Hurt Locker. The Hurt Locker is a fairly recent film that came out in the United States in 2009. It actually came out a little bit earlier, but wasn't really fully picked up or really realized until 2009. So for the most part, it is a fairly recent film, and it's also a very well critically praised film. It's won, I believe, a significant amount of Academy Awards and nominations. So it is a fairly recognizable film, and I wanted to check it out. I did see it, I think, once beforehand, but it was hard for me to remember everything, so it was nice to just sit back and watch again. And for the most part, I think it holds well for a war film. This film in particular is a war film, and it is about a three-man explosive ordnance bomb disposal team during the Iraq War. And some people might be wondering like what necessarily this movie is going to really focus on. Well, the movie generally tries to focus on giving you this atmosphere, and by trying to center it around these three people within this bomb disposal team. And basically you've got Jeremy Renner as the lead role, and he plays Sergeant First Class William James. Now his character is interesting in particular because he's a very well-experienced bomb expert. It even says at one point, one of the I want to say he's a captain. I'm not sure what his role is, but he barely gets any screen time. But he comes up to him, and he's a lot older looking than, you know, the younger guys, because this generally focuses on younger men. And he comes up to him and he says, "How many bombs have you disposed?" And then he's like, "Come on, answer me." And James tells him, like around 800. So he says, "Wow, you know, you have like this real talent, this real ability to go into a sort of warlike zone and be able to dispose of bombs." Now, this movie tends to focus on bombs, although there is shooting, but in particular it tries to build this kind of tension around the bombs. You'll especially see this when the characters are trying to sort of make sure nothing bad happens while Jeremy Renner's character is trying to dispose of the bomb. And you'll see the reason why Jeremy Renner's character is interesting is because he kind of likes to do things his own way. He doesn't really go with the whole kind of system as to how the military takes out bombs. Even at one point, usually they would have people wear these really big suits when they would go and try to dispose of the bomb, in order as a means of really protection. But William James, he knows that that's not going to help him, and that's not going to save him. And you'll kind of see how the suit doesn't really help in the beginning, and why it's fairly useless. So he basically says, "You know what? I'm not really going to wear this big," and this suit it looks like something out of like out of a science fiction, old science fiction movie, because it's just so bulky and big. And he just basically tells his team, like, I'm not gonna wear it. I'm just gonna go in and disable the bomb, and you know, I'm just gonna do things my way. And he's that kind of a guy. He likes to do things his own way, even if it ends up costing something, he thinks that ultimately it's the right decision to do, and he's willing to take the risks in order to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. And you'll kind of notice this too, how his character, there's one point where he has a box of all of these different things and he says these are things that almost killed me, and he basically kind of talks about how that fascinates him, and the reason why I think they're trying to emphasize this whole kind of addiction thing, this like adrenaline, is by sort of this war itself. There's a quote to the beginning of this film where it says like war is a drug, and basically the whole point behind that, I think, is really emphasized in Jeremy Renner's character, because all he wants to do is really go out and be on that edge and be on that rush. He likes that rush. He likes to put himself out there and at risk, and he's willing to take such dramatic steps in order to do so that it's somewhat fascinating to watch at times, and you kind of get a sense a little bit of who he is. However, he may not be as so appealing to some, because you know, they say, you know, he puts people at risk, you know, he's just doing it for himself. And even one of the characters towards the end gets really mad at him because he puts so much at risk. And you kind of see how he's not really necessarily meant out to be the most likable, but he's intended to be interesting. That's what you kind of have to get the point around, your point across from understanding. Similar to the Joker, you know, we don't really want to be like him, you know, we don't really want to aspire to him, but we find him interesting. And I think Jeremy Renner's character was interesting, and I think he did a good job as far as acting. And I think it was probably one of this movie, I think, was a really big starter role for him, because now he's in the Avengers, and he's going to be in the Bourne Legacy now. So really looking forward to that too. So you kind of see how he does kind of play these characters that are sort of within this kind of a zone. Like you'll see even in Avengers and Hawkeye, even though he's not given much, he's still given enough to where he can kind of present himself on the screen and sort of be noticeable, I think. And so I guess what you have to kind of understand from this movie is that it's kind of trying to paint this whole idea of how war is not, war is a very complicated kind of experience, and it kind of tries to, I think, highlight that in particular with Jeremy Renner's character, as well as the other characters as well. You have Anthony Mackie, who was playing the Sergeant J.T. Sanborn, and basically he's kind of the one that's a little, I would say he's the one that's more in charge, and he likes this kind of a structure that they have, and he doesn't want to put anybody's life at risk. And you'll kind of see like why he wants that in the beginning. You will get a sense of that, because something happens towards the way beginning, and you can sense why he would think that way, and why he would see Jeremy Renner's character as kind of this problem at times. So you kind of get a sense where he's coming from, and how he kind of, his character seems to like, I think, structure a lot more than Jeremy Renner's character does. Jeremy Renner's character likes to be out in the field and doing like disabling bombs and, you know, being on this rush and on this edge. But you'll kind of notice that Anthony Mackie's character, Sanborn, he really doesn't really like that all that much. And you'll kind of sort of see towards the beginning, towards the end, when he kind of wants to, you know, settle down. Like at first he says like, I don't really want to have kids now, and then towards the end you kind of see how he he doesn't really see a point in him being there and being in this war, and he doesn't see the point, and he has a conversation with Jeremy Renner's character, and it kind of really highlights these two different guys. These men are not intended to be the same or be focused in upon the same things. And you'll see how Sanborn is kind of more of the guy who likes to have maybe a little bit more structure and doesn't really like this kind of rush. He wants to kind of have some normalcy and not have this kind of sporadic thing going on, this kind of unpredictability, because he feels it's his job to make sure everything, it's just kind of his ideas, I think, get in, get out, but with Jeremy Renner's, it's like, I'm gonna go and get it done no matter what happens, no matter what the outcome. So you really will see that difference, and you'll kind of see how that plays in, and you'll kind of understand that they do sort of develop this kind of a bond, but at the same time there is still that difference because they're just different men. They have different goals, different ideas, and you'll kind of see that clash. Now there's another third character that I mentioned because this is like a 3-team thing, and this character is played by Brian Girauti, and he is Specialist Owen Edridge, and this guy is a little bit, I don't know if I want to say he seems to be different from, he seems to be the one that's more in the outfield compared to the other two, whereas the other two, you can kind of tell their personality and you can kind of get, okay, yeah, I totally get it. With his character, I think it's a bit different because he is kind of suffering through the war. Like, you'll see how he talks with a doctor and how he develops sort of this relationship with the doctor, and that and also with the other two main characters. But he kind of has his own problems and sort of dealing with it. It seems like his character has a hard time dealing with these things. He doesn't really know how to jumble them. It's almost like it's not that he can't fight or that he's like or that he's afraid. But I think war for him is a little bit harder to handle and juggle, maybe than the two main characters, I'd say, because his character, it seems like at one point you'll see how somebody dies. I'm not going to give away who dies, but somebody dies, and he literally goes out and he's like, and this actor does a really good job of acting. He goes out and he's like literally crying and calling out his name, and this guy literally blew up. This guy, it's totally clear that the guy is gone, but he's still going outside, still trying to call his name. And then Jeremy Renner's character, and I think the other guy was present too, they didn't react in that same way. They knew that he was dead, and they said, come on, it seems like with his character, he can't really handle war. He has a problem with it. The other two characters, they don't really talk to anybody else. They don't talk to like a doctor or really, it seems like they can handle it. But it seems like Owen is struggling with this kind of deal and this kind of experience that he's having, and it impacts him, and he doesn't know what to do about it. He can't juggle it. He can't. I don't think he likes the rush. He's not like Jeremy Renner's, whose character who likes the rush. But he's not like Anthony Mackie's character, who can somehow try to, establish this kind of structure and take on sort of like a leadership role. Owen, I don't think, is a character that's like that. I think Owen is a little bit more of someone who just obeys the rules, who follows everything through, but he just can't. He's just not meant for. He's just not meant to handle these kinds of situations, and it seems like he has difficulty dealing with them. Whereas the other characters, they kind of understand, that that it's war, and that's what you have to do, and that's what you have to deal with. But it seems like it's a little bit harder on Owen's character. And you will see from what I've explained to you, really how this film really carries itself. It carries itself with the characters, but not only the characters, but with atmosphere. This movie, I think, really does a good job of establishing this kind of atmosphere of Iraq. You really do feel like you're in Iraq, and when they're sweating, you feel like you're in their presence, sort of. It's like the movie knows how to make things fairly real, and tries to give you a sense of, what it was like, and, the things that they were particularly dealing with during this war. Because the Iraq War was really, there was always about these bombs. Like, I would just hear on TV constantly about, somebody bombing some area while the Iraq War was going on. So I think it does a good job in trying to emphasize, this is the kind of Iraq War, and this is kind of, 21st century type-ish warfare. And you kind of see how these different kinds of characters come up from that. You kind of see how some people would probably be a little bit like Jeremy Renner's character, who would be totally into the kind of rush of the unpredictability of certain situations, and you kind of get, the Anthony Mackie's character, as well as Brian Garotti. I want to make sure I get his name right. Probably didn't, but Garotti. You get a sense of his difficulty as well. And although I don't think the characters are, I think they're fleshed out good. I think that for the most part, I don't think this film is trying to really do anything new, in the sense that it's just trying to give sort of this war type films, I think, an update as far as warfare is concerned, because you kind of see how, if you watch older war films, you will realize this sort of shifts that people have had when it comes to warfare, and how there's different characters throughout these different time periods as to when warfare is taking place. And since this is very, very, very modern age, the Iraq War, you can kind of see how they do try to update it, and how they do try to make it feel like it is updated. But I don't think it's doing it necessarily anything new. I don't think it's really giving me something that I haven't seen before. I just think it's giving me something that is familiar and that works. I think that's what it's doing. And I think it's really worth checking out if you haven't seen it. But also by the atmosphere, and this may be a gripe for some people, is it does have a little bit of a shaky cam a bit. But I think for that kind of film it works. And the shaky cam isn't always constant, and it's not so like this. It's more like that. It actually feels like you're moving, and it's obvious to say why the director would do this. She wanted to really build a sense of this atmosphere, like you are walking around through these streets, and you are seeing like all the trash and all the desert, and it's really, I think, really well done as far as making this kind of warlike atmosphere. And now the director, I say, is a she, because Her name is Catherine Bigelow, and she was the first woman to ever win Best Director. And I think that's really cool, and I think that really says something. I wouldn't really necessarily put it in the classic category because I don't think it's really trying to do anything new, or I don't think you're gonna see a lot of people really reference this film or use this film. It's just a really good film that's just doing what a war film should do, and giving it sort of this kind of update, especially with the Iraq War, which is a fairly recent update to how warfare works. And you'll also kind of see how there were films that came afterwards. I want to say that the Green Zone did come afterwards, that do try to talk about the Iraq War, but it seems like not a lot of films have really touched upon the Iraq War so much. But it's nice to see that this one got really well recognized, and that people saw it. I know that maybe some people may take issue with it. Maybe with Jeremy Renner's character, I'm not sure. Maybe with the shaky cam. Because again, I don't think Jeremy Renner's character is really intended to be the most likable. I think he's intended to be one of the more interesting, and not really be such like the war hero, you know. He's not like, you know, Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. He's not. This is a totally different character, and this is a totally different ball game. So if you're interested in something that's kind of new, then this, I think, will really appeal to you. And if you do like war films, this is probably a film to definitely take into consideration. And I think it's really worth noting. But again, this film is violent. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It is, but for me, I don't necessarily mind the violence, just as long as there's sort of a purpose to it, and a significance behind it. And you'll kind of see how really bombs really play a role here, and how people use these bombs in order to, you know, sort of as a means to, you know, stop the American kind of assault. And I guess the American, I guess you could just say the invasion, because I mean we did go into that country, so it's kind of like their response is to just blow stuff up. And basically we responded with that with really high-tech technology, and you'll see how the technology sort of plays in, and I think it really does try to highlight something that we haven't really seen so much of, and that's in particular with bombs. But as far as doing things that I haven't seen before, it kind of just does things, but in a more updated sense as far as the time period is concerned. But I think that's really all I can say. I think it's a really good film. I think it's definitely worth taking into consideration if you're interested. But I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them, and until next time.